All right, awesome. Guys, welcome to another Chef Look Cooks. Today will be the last of our soup series before we start next month's series, which is going to be a bit of my favorites. Kind of going back through some old recipes I've done throughout my cooking career. But for today, we're focusing on soup, and we're focusing on probably one of my favorite soups, clam chowder. This recipe is kind of an amalgamation of one of my head chef's ideas, my grandma's recipe from when I was a kid. One thing that's really important for her, she never used thickeners. Things like a roux or anything of that nature. She pretty much just would take the potatoes and mash them. We're actually not going to mash the potatoes today, and the only thickener I'm going to be using is just a small amount of cornstarch. I'm using the cornstarch not so much to thicken the chowder. I don't really want a thick chowder. I like that brothy feel. There's going to be lots of vegetables and chunks in there that are going to make it plenty thick, but I'm using that cornstarch to take the bacon fat that will be on the top and incorporate that into the soup so that every bite you have has that bit of bacon fat, that bit of extra flavor that you want when it sits on top of the soup. It's first off not very pretty, but also that flavor is kind of lost. You get it first or maybe not at all if it's not in that spoonful. So we're going to incorporate that in with the cornstarch. That's the only thickener we'll be using. We'll be using as little as possible basically. So yeah, we're going to start off with rendering down our bacon. The bacon that I like to use usually is not Hormel black cut. No offense to them, they're fine, but it's not really my jam. The one I usually use is a pepper bacon from Jancel Valley. It's a commercial company that is usually only available to like restaurants, but sometimes Kronig's carries it. They don't carry it anymore, which is pretty sad. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use normal bacon, and we're just going to try and crack as much pepper in there as we possibly can. The pepper bacon that from Jancel Valley is also comes in slabs instead of sliced, which is really nice. So you can cut it into little cubes. No matter how thick cut your bacon is, this is like thick cut bacon, and it's pretty thick, don't get me wrong, but it's never going to be thick enough to get like a nice cube. And for me on this, I like little cubes of bacon. I just think that the mouthfeel on them is really nice, but the most important thing is really that bacon fat and emulsifying it into the broth. It's going to give a really good richness to the soup that I think really makes it one of the best things around. So we're just going to use regular bacon here. Again, thick cut is going to be your best bet. I actually find that this bacon isn't frozen, but I do find if you're going to be cutting bacon, especially into small pieces, if you freeze it beforehand, like if I was more prepared, I would have stacked them up like this and then frozen them. It's really, really easy to cut. Pork fat and fat in general, when it freezes, doesn't get fully solid like most water-based things, so you can still run a knife through them pretty well, and it just makes it a lot easier to get small dices, whereas right now I'm pretty much fighting against the fat itself. Let's get this thing heating up. So that's what we're going to start with here. We're just going to cut these into nice small cubes. I do want these to be large enough once they're cooked that you're going to be able to find them in the soup and get them in your spoon. So I don't want to go too small, but I also don't want to have them be, they're not the star of the show. The star is going to be the chowder clams when we get there. So we do want them to be, small enough. And again, this is a little bit harder to do when you're using sliced bacon, just because it just doesn't have the same texture for slicing, and it's just a little too thin. But we're making do with what we got. And I'm going to make sure I put a lot of pepper in there. That pepper is going to have a chance to toast in the grease, the bacon fat, and that's going to open up a lot of the oils that are in the pepper and help to bring a lot of extra flavor into this dish. We're not only going to toast the peppercorns, or the pepper, we're going to toast the herbs as well. So the thyme and the bay leaf are going to go right in there as well. Oh, what am I doing? Sorry, guys. I jumped way too far ahead. I got to open some cohogs first. So this is why I should probably read my recipes beforehand. I'm going to finish cutting this bacon just to get it done. But I've made this thing so many times that like my brain is just jumping into the second step. This was always a 2-day process, so the first day we'd open the cohogs, we'd pick all the meats, and then we'd save the broth and get it cool in the fridge. And then the next day we'd jump into actually cooking the chowder. That process made for a little bit smoother process in like a commercial kitchen, but obviously at home, you could do that as well. You could open your clams beforehand. Maybe if it's the summer and you're going out and getting them yourself, you could open them up and have them ready for whenever you do need to cook that clam chowder. You can freeze the broth and freeze the clams. They last for quite a long time in the freezer. But I do not want to be rendering the bacon yet. What I want to be doing here is I want to be getting my broth ready, or my opening liquid. And my opening liquid is going to be some aromatics, some herbs, shallots, and a little bit of pickle brine from hot peppers. I really like the hot pepper pickle brine specifically, just because I like a little bit of spice, personally. But I do think that even just the tiniest bit of spice is going to wake up your taste buds. And one of the reasons why this is such a good chowder is that it's kind of exciting for you to eat. When you eat it, you've got a lot of things going on. There's texture, there's flavor, there's a very, very nice brininess and saltiness from the sea, the literal ocean water that we're going to be putting in there, and then that fattiness as well that's been incorporated. When we do serve this later, I'm going to be putting just a touch of cream in there. Again, that bacon is going to really carry a lot of weight here. A lot of chowders you get in restaurants are just laden with heavy cream, and nothing wrong with heavy cream. It's really tasty. But we're not going to use heavy cream to make this tasty. We're just going to use it to add a little bit of extra flavor and a really nice sort of smooth color throughout. But that heavy cream is not something I want you tasting when we get to the chowder section. It's really just going to be there for looks and for mouth feel. We really don't want to taste heavy cream. And any chowder that tastes like heavy cream is going to taste good because heavy cream is delicious. Whipped cream specifically is delicious. But we don't want cream chowder. We want, corn chowder is a good chowder to have a lot of cream in. Corn has a lovely flavor, but with like a corn chowder, you can really get that cream to taste like something. But if your clam chowder tastes like cream, like I said, it's going to be good. But we're going to go pretty light on the cream. So just giving you heads up, there's so many chowders in the world, especially clam chowder. I know some of you have probably been to Net Result before and got the chowder they have there in bags. Actually rather good, but that's like a heavy cream chowder. That one is definitely putting a lot of effort into that cream to make it taste good. One of the other benefits of using low cream is this is probably one of the healthiest chowders you'll ever eat. Plenty of salt in it. You can't really ever avoid that when you're dealing with shellfish, especially bivalves who filter that fat, that salt. But it should be at least fairly low on the fat index, which is going to be nice. So, all right, let me just turn this off now that it's nice and hot. So we're actually going to start with shallots and garlic. Let's see, where's my garlic? I'm using pre-chopped garlic today just because it would have taken me a very long time to cut this. It is, in general, always best to use fresh garlic if you can. If I was in like a professional setting right now, what I'd be doing is I'd be running this through a food processor, and I'd have a big, massive bulk of it because we'd use it. But I just won't ever use that much garlic, so I decided to go with this instead. So we're just going to take a little touch of oil in here so that my garlic has something to cook in. And I will use this entire thing of garlic today. About a third of it is going to go into the opening liquid, and the rest is going to go into the actual chowder. So separate warning, if you don't like garlic, I'm sorry. Again, I made that joke before, but I am sorry. It's such a fabulous thing. Try it again if you really don't like it. You'll get a chance today. So we're just going to start with some garlic there and get that getting browned off. We don't need too much color in this garlic, because we are just making a broth. But we do want it to get cooked, so we are going to let it do a little bit of that. My heat is actually off right now. I got that pan pretty hot. And so I'm just going to cut up a couple shallots. The recipe you guys have with you is for like a normal amount of chowder, but I want to make sure I feed everybody. So I'm going to try and fill this pot all the way to the top with chowder by the time we're done. So you'll notice that I'm probably using more vegetables and more pretty much everything than what the recipe calls for. But if you follow the recipe, I guarantee you it will be absolutely delicious. It's just that's a more regular amount of chowder than what we're going to be cooking here today. So for the shallots, for the opening broth, we actually don't need to really cut them up that much. We're really just using them for flavor. So I'm just going to kind of cut them into sort of wild chunks here, and you don't even have to take off the skin because all of that is just going to add flavor here. We're not going to eat these. These are really just acting as an ingredient to make our broth more delicious. So all right, garlic is in there. I'm just going to put a touch more oil in there. All right, and then thyme. Thyme is such an important part of this. There we go. And bay leaf also. Bay leaf is just one of those things that Why is there a shaker lid? There's a shaker lid on top of the bay leaf. Like, I guess it's just standardization for you. But there's no way I'm shaking bay leaves out of this jar. But bay leaves and thyme are just like a really great way. If you're ever cooking anything and you want to sort of make it taste like you spent a lot of time on it, just put a little bay leaf and thyme in there and everybody will think that you spent all day on it. So I do like to toast these herbs beforehand. The thyme as well, I'll use about 2/3 of this container and save the rest with the other container for the soup itself. And we're just going to start cooking that in with the garlic. What you want to hear is a little bit of popping. I'm not getting it right now, but that's okay. It's probably just because I didn't have this super hot. You want the thyme leaves themselves to start to toast in the water that's trapped within them. It could just be this thyme is not as fresh as what I'm used to as well. Well, you can hear it simmering at least, which is nice. But usually when you first put it in there, they start to pop, 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 pop. And that's how you know that that thyme is starting to toast. You really want to cook the actual green itself. And I like to put the stems in here because, again, this is just the opening liquid. We're not going to drink it, or we're not going to eat it. I will put the stems in the soup later, and I did this last month as well. I just like thyme stems in my soup personally. Like, even when I'm eating it, I like to get one. You can kind of just like eat the thyme. Like, the leftover leaves that are on there will be like fully saturated. I'm going to put one more in there. Fully saturated with the soup, and most of the time I'll end up picking them out as I stir, but finding one, especially one with all the leaves on it, is like kind of like a little treat to me. So we're just warming this up. We want everything to be pretty hot before we put our quahogs in there, because the quahogs are going to drop the temperature quite a lot. So this is me. I'm going to read my recipe. I even got myself a pencil so I could be like, go through them. Most of these recipes I've done like a bunch of times or I've never done before, so my brain is just like, yeah, figure it out. All right, garlic, bam. Shallots are going in. So awesome. While this is heating up, I'm going to just start doing the rest of my chops for this dish. I want to try to, by the time that I am ready to cook my chowder, I want everything chopped. So anytime I have spare time, I'm going to be trying to chop vegetables while we're doing this. I've got fennel, I've got onions, I've got potatoes. Again, usually we do this in the kitchen, professional kitchen. I'll have either one of my prep cooks or myself. We'll have chopped all these vegetables previously. We'd have a bunch of quart containers just full of vegetables. We make such a massive batch of this that it's about 4 quart containers worth of vegetables that go in there. It's the best, plus like a whole box of potatoes. It's really, really fabulous. All right, cool. These are looking good. I'm just gonna punch up these shallots a little bit, get them all in touch with that heat. Whew. One of those is strong. Okay, great. So those onions are just going to need a little bit longer to cook, and then I'm going to go in with our peppers and our wine. Peppers and wine are going to be the start of the broth. That's going to be the first liquid. It's going to start to boil and create steam. That steam is going to cook our quahogs and open them up, and then the quahogs are going to release their moisture and create more and more moisture in there, which is going to get us to where we want to be for a proper broth. All of that liquid that comes out is going to make a delicious broth for us. You can do this with a dry pan. It's just going to take a little bit of time. It's usually better to start with something. If you don't want to use wine or you don't have wine, water and vinegar work just fine. You could just straight up use the pickle brine from the peppers. That's a little good. We're going to go in with our pepper juice now. So it says about 2 pickled cherry bombs. 2 pickled cherry bombs. The cherry bombs I usually use are about that size, so I'm going to put 2 worth of those, and I'm going to maybe like 3, I'd say. And then about 2 tablespoons, so 1, 2, 3 of that liquid. If you're in the front row, watch out. It's like a vinegar bomb. I'm using actual wine today. I probably should have said this earlier. I almost never cook with wine here, but we have an old bottle from like 3 years ago. So I'm going to put some in there. It's really good. Wine is a really, really fabulous thing for broth and soups in general. You've got to cook off the alcohol, but once you cook off the alcohol, it's got a very, it's usually like, especially white wine is very acidic. It adds a nice sort of acidic bite One of the things you'll notice with this dish is we're going to be using a lot of acids to sort of counteract the richness and fattiness and saltiness of this dish. So we've got the pickle brine, and when we go to actually, in the restaurant, what we do is we actually squirt a little bit of that vinegar in to the soup as we're reheating it as well. It's just a really nice thing. I do the same thing with my clams linguine as well. Pickle brine, specifically pickled peppers, that's a tongue twister, obviously. Pickled peppers is just a really nice accent to seafood. It's really, really beautiful. I'm a big fan of it. So I'm just going to let this liquid come to a simmer, and then we're going to throw in our quahogs. We'll do a quick little sort of tour of quahogs and the different types and names. You guys may have heard the term little neck and cherrystone before, or chowders. Those are all different, basically, names for the exact same animal. Whoop, I got one more shallot there. They're all quahogs or hard-shelled clams, depending on who you're talking to. My dad always called them quahogs because a clam was a steamer or a soft-shell clam, but it's all really, those aren't the same animal, but most of the time, through context, you can tell what people are talking about. Not many people are eating raw steamers, for instance, so they're talking about a raw bar. It's probably quahogs if they say clams. Great, this is coming to a steam. That's exactly what I want. All right, let's talk quahogs. So, I was lucky enough to have one big boy in my my thing. This is what I would call a chowder. It's basically anything over 2 inches. This is what I would call a little neck. A cherrystone. This is anywhere from 2 to 3 inches usually. And then we've got these guys, which are the little necks. This is usually what you're going to see at a raw bar, though you'll occasionally see cherrystones. These are probably the best for clams linguine. These are the best for this particular chowder, though these are going to be totally fine if this is what you can get. These are also way cheaper. These you buy by the pound. These usually you can buy by the pound, but you're always buying these by the each, and they're about like 50 cents each sometimes. So if you can get cherrystones or even chowders or smaller chowders in this, they're going to be perfect. I do like these cherrystones for 2 reasons. One, it's a lot of meat, and you're also getting a lot more brine than you would get with a little neck. Most of this is shell, so the bigger you get, the more meat and brine you're getting out of them. So I'm going to start with my cherrystones, and we're going to use as many of those as possible, and then I'll start using some of my smaller quahogs. And I'm just going to fill this thing up. I heard a question, yeah?
I'm just curious, did you rinse the clams?
I did, yeah, I rinsed them. There's still going to be grit on there, and what will happen is I'll, when I strain this broth later, I'm just going to let it sit in this bowl, and when I go to pour it off, I'm going to leave like the last little bit, and that's where all that grit will be. It's just like a gold prospector, you know, when they're shaking. That grit's going to be more dense than anything else in the broth, and so it's going to go right down to the bottom. So I'm literally just going to try and fit as many of these as I possibly can in here. In the past, I've used 10 pounds, about fits in here, but I'm going to really shove it all the way through. I'm going to stop about halfway through just to stir the clams, or quahogs. I want to make sure that they do get heated evenly. And we don't really want to cook these until all of them are open necessarily, but we do want to make a good effort to get most of them open. If you cook them until they're all open, you're going to have the ones at the bottom are going to be completely overcooked. It's not going to be very pleasant. So you usually want to just cook them until most of them are open, until you really start to see a really good broth. And then when we go to pick through them later, we'll be able to get the rest of them open that haven't opened. Stirring also helps to get some of the things at the bottom that might not do so well with high heat up to the top to keep them safe. And it gets those warmer quahogs from the bottom up here so I can start filling up with more. Alright, I think we're just going in mass now. And I started with the quahog, the cherrystones, the bigger ones. Those will be at the bottom where the heat's higher. These smaller ones now will be up top where there's going to be more steam, but a lot less heat, and so they hopefully won't overcook during that whole process. Alright, cool, we've got a couple extras. When I'm opening, if I'm opening some oysters later, maybe I'll do a couple quahogs for everybody as well. Alright, cool. Let's get those back in the fridge. We want to make sure we keep them safe and cool. These are currently alive, but if we keep them outside in warm temperatures for too long, the bacteria might go a little bit crazy. We don't want them to die before we eat them. So. that broth is starting to come back to temperature now that I put these colder quahogs in there. I'm just gonna shake it down, put my lid on, try and put my lid on. You do want a nice tight seal here if you can get one, just so you can make pressure go up. That steam pressure is gonna help. What is doing that? Perfect. Okay, great. Now we wait. And in the meantime, I'm just going to start cutting veggies here. We'll go through all the different chops and the different sizes I like to use for this. So we're starting with shallots. Shallots are, if you don't have shallots or you don't like shallots, you can always just use normal onion. Just add more onion to this recipe. There's not a large amount in the actual dish. It's just enough to add a little bit more sweetness, a little bit something sort of special to the chowder. That just came apart completely. So these we're going to cut pretty small. I'm not doing an actual brunoise, which would be like a very small dice. I did cut the root end off, so it's a little bit harder to do that. If I had the root end on, I'd be able to keep it together like that and do like a very small dice. But I really don't mind if these are big enough to actually be mouth bites. But I do want them smaller than what I'm going to be cutting my onions. I want the onions to be the thing you sort of taste and see in the chowder when the time comes. But shallots are really lovely. They're, especially with seafood, they're sort of the base for mignonette, which I'm sure some of you have had with raw oysters before. They're just a really nice, they're like the friendly onion. They don't often make you cry. They're not incredibly aggressive if you eat them raw. They're not necessarily going to make your partner shy away from you when you come over breathing on them. Though honestly, every partner I've ever had didn't really mind the onion smell. In fact, I think it was kind of like a good thing. It was like, oh, you've eaten something tasty. Where is it? So, if you find somebody who really likes onion and garlic, you found a great person to eat onion and garlic with as well. So, no offense to those who don't. It's just my own personal preference. So again, we're just cutting these fairly small. They don't have to be perfect. I talked about this last time, but in one of these video games I played when I was a kid, there was one of the chefs just had the most ugly chops in the entire world. And as a kid, when I was growing up, that always just kind of made me feel really okay about my own cutting. He could make the best food, even though it looked horrible. And so, never judge a book by its cover. Never judge a meal by its plating. Taste is the most important thing. We do eat with our eyes first, but yeah, if it tastes bad and looks pretty, I don't want it. I'd much rather have something that's absolutely atrocious looking and delicious. But all right, cool. We're starting to get some good pressure in there. And this is something you can do with a pressure cooker if you have one. It doesn't take that long, but if you have one, it is an incredibly fast process. You put them in there, put that lid on, and I think it takes like just a couple minutes because pressure is really quick. That's also going to kill them. That heat pressure especially is going to do a lot of work in getting them to open. We don't necessarily need to cook them right now. We just need to open them. You could even just open these raw if you wanted to, but then we'd sort of skip the hot process of the vinegar and the thyme and the shallots making this broth for us. So I do like to cook them, but a lot of times with bigger quahog chowders, people will just open them raw and use that broth, that brine for the chowder. But just never throw away the brine. That's the most important thing. It's such an important part. We're gonna jump into fennel now. I'm just gonna basically be chopping all the veggies while this goes. So for fennel, I like to, for this at least, take the tops off. If any of you guys juice, these are really great for your juicer. Fennel is a fabulous veggie. It's got a very like licorice-y or what's the word? Anise smell, and it's really good. I like it for this as sort of a celery, not substitute because we are using celery, but if I put as much celery as I'm going to put between these two, it just tastes too much like celery. So it's got that sort of celery texture, but it adds a little bit of sweetness. This chowder almost has like a sort of Thai philosophy. We want a little bit of spice, a little bit of sweet, a lot of salt, plenty of salt, and a little bit of that fat or umami flavor. Adding all those flavors together is what sort of makes your taste buds come awake and alive and get really excited about what's about to happen. And so by using all of those flavors together, we're touching all the different parts of our taste buds, really bringing our mouth alive, and that's what's going to make us go, this is really good. So what I did there, that's how I would cut an onion if I wanted to get very small pieces, which is what I want to do with this. And so I'm cutting the layers, which you can kind of see there. I'm cutting them this way so that I don't have any like weird long pieces. And then I'm going to come in from the top, and I'm going to cut myself nice little strips. And I'm going for about the same size as my celery. The onions and the potatoes will be the biggest pieces of vegetables in there. The celery, shallots, and the fennel are going to be a little bit smaller. They're more of our flavoring agents, whereas the onions and the potatoes are kind of like our mouth, or our bulk of the dish. And so I'm just cutting these. I would say maybe this is like a centimeter cube. For me, like the first thing I think about when I see this size of cut is like celery for a salad. And I'll show you with the celery about what we're going for. And I just don't want to cut too deep on this because the root does go pretty far in there. Awesome. And if you were doing like any other broths or any other soups, you could definitely save the bulb there and use that as like a broth base. It goes really good for like a veggie broth, or like a court bouillon for like cooking lobsters or something like that. You could put those chunks in there with some lemon, a little bit more wine. It'd be a really, really good broth for cooking off some lobster tails or whole lobsters as well. And much like this, we're building a really flavorful broth to make a really, really good chowder. A lot of people cook lobsters in just water, and there's nothing wrong with that. For most of my life, that's what I did. But if you want them to taste really, really good, you cook them in something that tastes really, really good, and they're going to taste a lot better as well. It feels really wasteful, and it's something that I don't do often, but if you pay attention while you're cooking veggies and you save things like your celery root and your fennel root and your onion skins, you can make a really flavorful broth out of things you normally would have composted or thrown away. So that just a little bit of sort of pre-planning if you're thinking about it. I don't do it anymore because I have a really nice compost right now. I used to just put all my like vegetable pieces in the freezer, and then when it came time, you throw them in a broth, and they kind of just make magic happen. So that's a pretty good amount of fennel. I did get 2 bulbs just to make sure, and I think I'm going to cut probably like half the other one, but I think that's going to be enough for us. Oh, yeah. This is going to be good. It's going to be really good. I haven't made this in maybe like a year and a half, but it was always just one of my favorite things to do. The whole process, getting to like be this close to the entire thing. Like we basically started with a bunch of whole foods here. I think the pickled peppers are pretty much the only thing that was like processed beforehand. I guess the wine technically. This is my favorite kind of cooking, when you just take a bunch of things that don't make sense necessarily, and then all of a sudden you have something else entirely different. So again, this is a really useful technique for cutting basically anything round that has layers like this. Onions and fennel are going to be some of your big ones that you're going to run into, but this can work for pretty much anything, even like an apple, or maybe not an apple because it has a core, but I'm trying to think of something else round you'd want to cut. I don't know. Most things, I guess, you can do the sort of plank method, but anything that's got like a sort of bulb. Cabbage, this works pretty decent for cabbage as well, if you need to get cubes of cabbage. The most of the time when I'm doing cabbage nowadays, I've been using a mandolin or like a shredder. I just find it a little bit easier for getting nice thin pieces. You know what, I'm going to do all the fennel. It's going to be fine. We're going to go chunky here. I just won't have to put it in if I don't want to when the time comes. But it's always better to just have it ready. So yeah, so this is how I'd cook this if I was doing it at home. Again, in the restaurant, I'd have these all done beforehand, but I'd also be cooking a lot more bacon and peeling a bunch of potatoes. I'm not going to peel potatoes today. For a restaurant or for like fancy things, peeled potatoes are really nice. But for you and nutrition, peeled potatoes are a waste of peels. Unless you're going to eat the peels somewhere else. Don't ever peel potato unless you feel like you have to, or if you're making a dish that really, really cares about it. If you're ricing a potato, for instance, there's like a little mechanism. It's a big sort of press. You put the potatoes in, and it turns them into like little streams. You probably can't use skins, but if you can ever keep the skin on a vegetable, I would highly suggest it. And that goes for everything. Beets, that goes for turnips, and anything that you feel like you have to peel. Most of those skins are edible. It's just kind of, I think it's a big holdover from French cooking in like the early 90s and or the early 1900s, and it's just this whole concept of everything has to be like white and pure and no skins, no texture. For me, that's cooking should be about flavor. Sure, it's important. Texture is important. How it looks is important. But how it tastes and then what it actually does to your body, for me, feels like way more important. So, and I've said this a bunch of times. I try to never skin anything. I'm not going to peel these potatoes today. Just to go back to the original point. This is starting to get going. Come on, little guy. It's a lot of cohogs I just put in there, right? So all of those were in the fridge, and so they have to come up to temperature right now. The broth down here may be boiling, but that temperature change, the boil water is only making about this high before it condensates again on the cold cohog. So they are getting done. But again, there's a nice little root. You save that for a nice stock, no problem. Nothing wrong with that. It's just tough, so I wouldn't eat it. You can eat that. There's nothing saying you can't eat that. It's tougher. But it's got tons of vitamins. Usually the toughest parts on a plant or a vegetable are some of the most nutritious, because they're the things that have been through the most sort of weathered experience. And so the plant had to repair them, had to send nutrients there to get that done. Those nutrients, after they were used, are still there. Your body just has to digest them to get them. So don't ever be afraid of ugly vegetables. Sometimes they can be even better than the nice pretty ones. So I'm just taking off the leaves here. Again, something you can eat, but for me, in a soup like this, I don't really like them. Celery leaves are, they're very good for you because they're super bitter. Most bitter greens are incredibly dense in nutrients, and celery greens, for me at least, are like insanely bitter. So that just means they're good for you. But that doesn't mean I want to put them in the soup at the time. I think if they were harder to pull off, I probably would just put them in there. Sometimes, it's just nice to make life easier for yourself when you can. And so, we're going to know. So with the celery, I like to cut it in half, just so it's the same length as my knife. If it's longer than my knife, you end up having to do something like this, which I'm sure you guys have all done before. We have to go down the whole thing, and it just doesn't end up with an even piece. So I cut them to the length of my knife, and then when they're the length of my knife, I can cut straight down them. And that ensures that I'm going to have nice, even pieces of celery when I go to cut. And so we are doing the sort of classic planks to sticks method here. So celery kind of comes in a plank already, so you just have to cut that plank into sticks, and then we'll be good to go. We'll take those and cut them into cubes after that. Starting to smell it, which is good. That means that some of that liquid is starting to get to the top here, and we should have open cohogs in no time. It's pretty quick when it does start to happen. We're going to go from basically just this sort of condensation on the top to full. It's starting to do it even a little now. It's getting hot up here. Full drips, and this lid might even pop off as some of the cohogs start to open and push their way out. So it's going to happen pretty quick here, and I hope very quickly. I'm just going to chop all these in half right now, save myself a little bit of time. And now we have all these sticks, we just get them all lined up and then run over the other side. And again, we're doing about a centimeter cubed here, I'd say. A lot of times you'll hear people say dice or chop or small dice. Those are all kind of measurements in their own way. A small dice would be like a millimeter or a brunoise. Essentially, it's a paste at that point. It's not really much to it. If you cook with it at that size, it's going to turn into nothing. And it's really, most of the time you'll do that for things that are flavoring agents and aren't something you want to actually necessarily eat. Shallots and onions are classically cut that way when they are flavoring soups. Then you've got a dice, which is basically what we're doing here. That's about a centimeter. Those are really good for flavoring agents. Usually when you're doing a mirepoix or a soup, you'll do a dice as well. And those are things that you want to be able to see in the soup, but you don't necessarily want to be able to feel. You don't want a mouth feel to them. You just want to know that they're there, but you want them to be fully cooked and fairly soft by the time it actually comes to consumption. You've got a chop, which usually will be about an inch cube, and those are things that they may be flavoring agents for the soup, like onion, but you want the people who are enjoying that food and eating it later to be able to really feel them and chew them, and they're the things that you're going to be eating. They're sort of usually the main ingredient. That's going to be meat in a chili, potatoes in a chowder, things that you want the texture to be around. And because they're larger, they're going to cook, but because they're so big, they're going to be one of the last things to be fully cooked. And usually when they're fully cooked, whatever you're cooking, in this case soup, is done. And so for us, that's going to be potatoes mainly. And when those potatoes are done, our chowder is going to be done, and it's going to be a lovely time. We still got some time to go, I'm sorry to say, but when it's there, it's going to be beautiful. We're all going to enjoy it. All right, let's go celery in here. So again, lots and lots of veggies. That's really the trick. You don't have to thicken your soup if you just put a lot of things in it. And it also makes it a lot more hearty and filling, and it just tastes good. You can buy extra clam stock and you can put that in your soup, and it's going to taste more and more clammy. But nothing is going to ever really replace just having something to bite down on. We should have a pretty good amount of meats from these as well, which are going to add into our abundance. The meats from the quahogs, that is. All right, I'm starting to see some water drip a little bit more. That's good. That means that there's more water coming up from the bottom, which is what we want. That's an indicator that we are starting to actually steam and get these guys open. I might take the top off and just try and give them a little stir once I'm done with the celery. So when we look at all that next to the pot, it's like, all right, we're going to be pretty full. It's going to be good. Everybody should be able to eat a nice amount. Oh yeah. Oops, so I can hear that broth boiling down there, which is good. I'm just going to kind of dig in here. Oh, a couple of my ones on top are actually opening, which is good. Just going to try and get a little bit of movement. And that's basically what I want right there, is just open. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's not completely open. It's not like just like completely open, but you can see that it's open. All of its broth is now in this pot, which is exactly what I want. But I'm just going to give these a little bit more time because there's still a couple that are not there yet, assuming I can get this top back on. I want you guys to have plenty of meat. All right, lovely. That should be done pretty quickly here, I think. But we'll just keep going with chops. Get our onions done, and then we'll be all ready to start our next phase. So onions, there's a lot of different ways I've seen to cut onions. Actually, let's do a quick little onion tour. I recently was cooking with somebody who I haven't cooked with before, and they did this to their onion. What did they do again? I can't even remember because I've never actually done it. No, that's not it. Was it just? No, never mind. I can't really remember. Oh, no. Anyways, I immediately was like, what are you doing? And it just, it felt like a way that was very, like, hard to do. So I'm going to show a couple different ways that I like to cut onions for those who are interested. And then I've got sort of the, like, fast and dirty way, which is what I was doing with these ones over here. Oh, that's probably enough. Alright, so first way would be with root on. So the only reason I'd want to leave a root on an onion is if I'm trying to do a really small dice, or if I am grilling the onion. So if I'm going to grill onions, I do this all the time now. Oh, that's sounding really good over here. I do this all the time now. I cut them up like that. I leave the root on, and then I'll put the root towards me, and I'll cut right through the onion into wedges like that. each wedge still has the root attached, so while you're grilling that, I don't know if you guys have ever grilled onions before, but they always fall through the grate, and then you start with like 100 onions, you have like 2. And you're like, what just happened to all my onions? So with this, you've got a nice wide base that's going to prevent it from going through the grate. If some of it goes through the grate, the rest of it will hopefully stay up on top. So I'll grill them like that. I flip them once, and then I'll put them on their butt end, and I kind of like smash them and make a big pile. Absolutely fabulous way to grill an onion. You'll never lose an onion again, which is the best part. They will have a very hard time going through the grate. It has happened before. I will say I've lost an onion still, but you lose a lot less than you usually would. And then for like a small dice, I'll leave the root on as well, and I'll cut it this way, much like you saw me do with the fennel. And what that's doing, that's cutting across those layers. I come in from the top, as small as possible. This is basically a brunoise. I probably would get thrown out of a French cooking school if I just said that, but that's okay. It's close enough as far as a small dice. And then you come back through the other way, and you get a really, really nice small dice. And the one problem with that is it usually ends up being a little wasteful. But if you're doing something like that, you're really going for visuals more than anything else. So the waste is usually not as big of a problem. And then the last one here is we'll do holes. And I usually try and just cut a little slit in the side here to get that outside peel off. And I'll usually do this if I'm doing something like burgers and I want raw onion for it, or if I'm cooking onion rings. This is usually the way I'll peel my onions, because I want those big rings. And if I if I leave the root on there, I can get really, really close without the whole thing falling apart. These are so close over here. Come on. This one had one extra peel. So now that it's like that, you can hold right onto the root, which is really nice, while you cut off your rings for onion rings or for doing burgers. You could also grill these if you want, though. Every time I do that, they still fall apart. They still fall through. But if you cut them nice and thick like that, I usually will cook these in like a griddle, a cast iron pan, and they work out pretty well at home. So that's like a couple ways to do it. But for me, the quick and dirty, as I cut off the root and the top, and the reason that it's a lot quicker is that it's a lot easier to peel when there's no root or top. You can kind of just take the whole thing off at once. So that's why I like to do that. And that's usually if I'm doing like a proper chop. I want something that's going to be big and chunky and stay together when I cook it. So I'm just going to finish peeling these, and I think I'm going to pour this out. Pretty sure our quahogs are done. They sound done. I can hear like a pretty thick amount of water boiling in the bottom there, which is good. Great. Again, that whole pile of skins and stuff right there, that would make a really good stock if you just threw it together. The outside of the onion is still just onion. It's just onion that's been dried and dehydrated. In fact, a lot of commercial onion powders are made from onion skins, so they have plenty of flavor in them. It's really not a problem to use those and eat them. All right, we got a nice couple of them are saying hi out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start pulling some of them out as I stir this. I just want to make sure that I don't leave too many uncooked, and this will also make some more space for me to stir them and get them back into the bottom. Oh yeah. Whoops. Okay. That was pretty cool. I missed him when I put him in there. Look at how cute he is. He ran into some troubles in life, and then he ran into us. So, all right, Yeah, this is looking pretty good. There's still a couple up top that aren't quite as cooked as I want, so I'm gonna leave this for just a little bit longer here. Now that I've taken some of those out, just to really finish. I don't want to have any that aren't open. It's just gonna make the process later a little bit of a pain in the butt. There's gotta be like one more down there. There we go. Get him out of there. Oh, this smells so good. So this is the exact same method I use for doing clams linguine. A lot of times you'll see people who are doing clams linguine will have the quahog shells in the pasta, and I don't know, for me that doesn't really groove. I think if you're gonna put something on a plate, it should be edible. I don't mind them, like it's nice again for presentation, but like if there's shells in your pasta dish, there's probably also grit in your pasta dish, and the last thing I want when I'm slurping some pasta is to get a crunch of a shell. It just gives me the willies. So do that if you want to, but I wouldn't. I don't anymore, I should say. It's nice for showing off that you sort of used real quahogs and not like ones from a can. But if you're, I don't know. I wouldn't do it. That's where we'll leave it. And a lot of times those people are cooking those quahogs in the broth before they add the pasta, right? So again, it's just a high chance for grit. It's not something I would ever really want to do. I would certainly feel very, very scared trying to serve that in a restaurant, because the last thing you want after you make your delicious clams linguine dish is someone to send it back because it's gritty. And so I'm just doing a quick little run through over here. I'm going to cut the rest of that root off. So this is the quick and dirty method. I've cut the root and the stem off, and then I just sort of go around here, follow the rings to make nice strips, and then from those it's cubes. I like this method because it's the least cuts possible basically. Depending on size, you cut those sizes bigger, and then your cross sections bigger. You can just like cut full strips if you go bam 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 along the edge like that. You can just do a lot of different things with your onion from that sort of state, so it's nice to have the options available to you. Alright, that's probably enough onion for now. You know what, I'll cut this guy up. Let's go for it. We're all going in there. So I did make the program a little bit longer today. I don't know if you guys noticed, but this is one of the reasons. I wanted to make sure I had plenty of time to get these quahogs open and ready to go for us. I could have done it beforehand, but I really like just everybody to be able to see this process. I think if you have gas stove at home, or even just normal electric, this is an induction burner, and it's like a portable one, so it's a little less full powered. But if you have like the ability to just go full bore on a gas stove, this is going to happen a lot faster. You're going to be able to bring that steam pressure up really quickly. It's going to recover faster from adding in the quahogs, and we'd probably be done at this point. But that's okay. That's why I added more time. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to cook, and that you guys all knew what was happening there. So we're doing okay. Once this part's done, the rest of the chowder actually doesn't take too long. We're really just waiting for the potatoes to cook. So this is kind of like the chops and the steaming is one of the longest, sort of the longest part of the process. So awesome. Just gonna do a quick little cleanup, and then I think I'm gonna call these boys done. I see a lot more open ones than I did before. And if we have to crack some open, so be it. It will not be the end of the world. The important thing is that the majority of them, I'd say 75%, you want to be open before you start pouring this out. Awesome. Let's go for it. So you're turning this off, and here we go. So you remember how much liquid was in there before, right? You're about to see a lot more come out of here now. And you see the color of that? Isn't that just like beautiful? Here, let me actually make sure the camera can get it. Oh! It's like this beautiful, almost green color. And that's what's going to make our chowder the best in chowder on Martha's Vineyard.
You're all steamed up.
So I worked in a kitchen for a really, really long time. Going in and out of the walk-in, this would be like my daily life, basically. Is trying to like see. So I can operate pretty well with just like the peripherals. Oh yeah, sorry. I have this second one because I knew this was going to happen. They always take up more space once they've opened. You see, we've got all that pepper and garlic. The thyme is still there. I don't know where it would have gone, but one of my favorite things to do while I'm picking these is to just eat the little pieces of garlic and onions, shallot rather specifically. Oh man, that's gonna be so good. Yeah, hi.
Those would be pretty tasty, just like that.
Oh yeah, those could be done. Those could be. That's a meal in itself. You don't have to do anything. And with the broth too, and then there's like just do like strain the broth, and then maybe just like serve it with some breaded butter or something, or buttered bread. Yeah, 100%. That'd be so good, just like that. You really don't have to do anything. From this point on, you'll notice on your recipes that I do have the sort of the opening separate from the chowder. That's on purpose. This is its own recipe in its own right. You can, this is the way, same way my clams linguine starts. This could be the start of any number of different amazing dishes. You don't even need to eat the cohogs. That broth itself could be good for all sorts of different things. So yeah, this alone is really its own recipe. If you take nothing else away from this class about the chowder, take away this broth and how to open it, and the fact that we're layering flavors is something that I didn't really respect a lot when I was younger. The fact that like adding a little bit of thyme, and I always felt it was wasteful because I wasn't going to eat it. But flavor sometimes is that important. And it's not that much. It was like 4 shallots and some thyme, and like it wasn't, at the end of the day, maybe $5 to make a broth that's going to change your life. Whereas if I just steamed those open, it would be good, but it wouldn't be the same. So cool. We are now into the bacon phase. It all started early, into the bacon phase. We are now back to where I started, pre-started earlier. So I'm just gonna dry this pan out, and then we're gonna start rendering our bacon. This bacon looks like it's probably got enough fat. I am gonna put a little bit of oil in there. When you have a little bit of fat, let that dry out first. On a pan like this, especially stainless steel, it helps to avoid that first bit of sticking. A lot of times with stainless, when you're cooking without grease, you get a really, really quick fond or foundation. It usually comes from meat, but sugary vegetables can give it to you as well. It's that brown bits on the bottom that happens. It's pretty easy with bacon to just sort of scrape and get that off. And I want a foundation in this, but I don't know a lot about this bacon, so I don't want it to stick. I don't want it to have tons of chunks at the bottom that are just going to sit there for the rest of this process. So just a little bit of oil will help to get that bacon cooking faster. That was probably more than I needed, but and it will stop it from sticking really too badly. This is still pretty warm from what I was just doing, so I'm just going to go right in with my bacon. Oh yeah. That was just canola oil. You can use literally anything you want, even other bacon fat if you have some from breakfast or something like that. That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Alright, I probably should have read the recipe. I stopped doing it again. I don't know if you guys noticed. Render bacon over low heat. Woohoo! We did it! Okay, cool. So we're going to then add the celery and fennel. Sorry. First, we're going to add the garlic and the thyme, because we want those to get nice and toasty. We are going to put get over here. The rest of my thyme in there. That was 2 of the little, I think it's 18-ounce packages. And then I'm also going to put some more bay leaf in here. Again, that's a decent sized bay leaf. Bay leaves to me are they're pretty big. So when I say 1 bay leaf, that's what I'm talking about. So if you have smaller bay leaves at home, just add more. You really can't put too much bay leaf in there. I mean, you probably could, I guess, but it's a really fabulous flavor. It's hard to describe it. You don't really want to ever eat them. You can eat them, but when we get to the end, if you get one in your bowl, don't be afraid. They're just sharp, but they are edible. You could even eat them raw like this. They're really, really sharp. So.
And you always put them in half.
Sorry, what's that?
You always put them in half.
Oh yeah, whole. Yes. You can. There's powdered bay leaf, and that works perfectly fine. It actually is a little bit of a thickener. In gumbo down south, bay leaf powder. Don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure they call it filet, gumbo filet. And yeah, okay, cool. And it actually helps thicken the soup. So there's a lot of different ways to thicken gumbo. One of them being a roux. That's the classic way. You can also use okra. The okra goop will get in there and thicken. So yeah, so you can see this bacon has like this, like, it's like water, right? There's water in the bacon. So the Jansel Valley bacon doesn't have that. It like immediately goes to fat. So this is part of why I put some of the oil in there. That water will cook off and we'll start to render this, but for now it's just kind of like watery bacon. It's what it is. We can't judge it too hardly. It's still bacon. It was on sale, right? So it's got that going for it. But yeah, so gumbo filet is the other one. Gumbo is a chowder of another name, but thickness is like part of what makes it so good. When you know it coats the back of a spoon, kind of, that's how you know the gumbo is actually good. And so for that, but they don't use a roux, they don't use like a slurry like we're going to do today. They use a roux that's been cooked and added flavor to it. And that's a perfectly great way to use a roux. You can use a roux in a chowder like this, but a lot of times with chowder, that sort of white color is something we're going for. So I don't use a roux in this. You could use a blonde roux, which is just a roux that's like barely cooked through. But for me, if I'm doing roux, I want something that's been cooked for a bit. I want some flavor added in there. I'll use it for gravy. I'll use like a white roux, which is basically just flour and water for gravy. But apart from that, I'm usually doing cooked roux. If I'm using them at all, I don't usually use flour in my soups unless I'm like making like a pasta or something to go into it. But all right, cool. So we're rendering this as best we can. Obviously, this is the last I'll say about this inferior bacon. But it still smells good. It still smells like bacon, which is nice. I'm going to take this time though to put a whole bunch of pepper in there. Try and do our best to play at the pepper bacon we had before. White soups specifically, but any soup at all. And for me, I think pepper is just a really, really, really good way to add some extra flavor without really necessarily adding anything else. Pepper is a little bit acidic and a little bit spicy. Both things that we're trying to add into this dish. Again, like I said, it's almost that sort of thyme mentality of all the flavors at once. It's just a really, really fabulous spice to use because of that acidity and because of that spiciness. It's a different spice than what we're going to be getting from our pickled peppers, different chemical, which is exactly what we're going for. And then that bit of acidity is going to be really, really nice with the bacon specifically to help cut that fat. I was talking with some of my friends earlier about sort of flavor dynamics and how things work and how to balance dishes. For instance, if you have a dish that's really bitter, maybe because you burnt something and still put it in there because you didn't want to waste it, or just because you were using bitter greens, salt is a really good way to balance that bitterness out. The salt will take your taste buds and it actually blocks some of the bitter taste buds. So salt is a really great balance to bitter. In the same vein of things, acid is a really great balance to fat. If you have too much fat, you add some acid, all of a sudden it's more pleasurable to eat. It doesn't feel as heavy on your tongue. The acid cuts through that. If something's too acidic, you add sugar. Sugar is a really fabulous way to make something. Lemonade is a classic example, something that would essentially be inedible. You add a little bit of sugar to it, and all of a sudden you have something that's absolutely amazing. So let's see, we did sugar, bitter, salt. No, wait. Oh yeah, if something's too salty. What do we get so far? Sugar. You can add sugar. No wait, we did sugar already. You can add fat. Yeah. You can add fat. Starch also can work. But classically they say like add potatoes to something if it's starchy. That's because the potato is just absorbing the salt. But fat is a very helpful way to make salt more bearable, at least. That's why when you're doing like a really, really low, slow roast, like barbecue, that barbecue can be like really, really salty. Like especially ribs can feel like incredibly salty and extremely flavorful. But because that dish is super fatty as well, it's not quite as aggressive. The fat helps to sort of like insulate your mouth from that sharp bite of too much salt. And so there's different ways you can sort of balance and make up for different things. So this is looking pretty rendered. It's not perfect, but I'm going to cook it some more with these herbs in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in. I'm going to put all of our thyme in there as well. Oh yeah. We're just gonna let that fat from the bacon start to infuse with that herb flavor. The herbs are gonna cook in this soup throughout the whole process, but that slick of fat that we're gonna see at the top when we're done with everything, I'm gonna put more pepper in there too. This grinder is not that good. That slick of fat that, can you guys hear that now? That's the thyme, that's the thyme, that's what I was talking about earlier, that's what we want. That slick of fat that's gonna be at the top when we're done is gonna have that thyme flavor infused into it. It's gonna taste like bacon and thyme and garlic. And being able to incorporate it into that soup completely is gonna make that flavor really permeate even more than it would have if we had just cooked the herbs in the broth itself. Bouquet garni, I think is what the term is when you take your herbs like this, you tie them up and put them into your soup. That's a really great method, but I like this better. I like just tossing them in. For one thing, I'm not ever really scared to get a bit of extra, thyme leaf in my soup. The whole point of doing that is that you can easily take it out when you're done. But again, I like having bits of thyme in there. When we're done with this, you'll see there'll be bits of thyme, like the actual leaves floating in the soup as well, and that'll be really nice. So this bacon is getting almost perfect. You can see there's a little bit of fond on the bottom. That's that brown bit down there. That's what we want. That means I'm pretty much done with the bacon, so I'm going to put the rest of my garlic in there. I'm going to try and get the rest of the water out of here. Water and fat do not mix, but it's just going to be what it is. And it's all going in, baby. So this is like jarred garlic, which is a little bit less intense than normal garlic. I would probably only put maybe like a tablespoon less than what I just put in there if I was using fresh garlic. Oh my god, this is gonna be so good. Okay, I'm gonna turn this down a little bit. I don't want to burn my garlic, and I'm gonna start cutting into my potatoes. So you'll notice I haven't salted anything at this point. That's on purpose. This broth is super salty. It is essentially salt water. We don't necessarily need any more salt in there. Oh, cool, those are doing good. That's why I haven't put any salt in. We're gonna check the salt when we get to the end of our dish, and we're gonna find out if we need any more. It is a rare occurrence when I need more salt while I'm cooking this dish. It is almost always the perfect amount, or even sometimes too much, and I have to add some water back in there. So this is looking absolutely fabulous. I wouldn't necessarily call that a dish, but I wouldn't mind putting that on some toast or something like that. A little bacon and garlic and thyme, like just blend that whole thing up. Oh, that'd be so good. Nice little spread. So I'm just looking for the garlic to get a tiny bit of color there before I start putting in my veggies. Actually, I'm going to turn it up because I've got veggies going in there soon. So the potatoes, I'm doing my plank and stick method. I'm going for about an inch, or a half inch rather. I probably am going to cut them a little too small, but that's okay. I want them to be cooked for you in a relatively fast manner, so I'm not going to go super big. But again, these are going to be one of our main textures in the soup, so I do want them to be big enough that when you get them in a bite, it's pleasurable and nice. These are going to get thrown in right in with the vegetable and fat mixture before I even put the broth in there at all. So the first flavor they're going to hit is going to be fat and veggie and bacon. It's going to be really nice. It means they're going to suck that fat right up into themselves, and they're going to taste really, really good. They're going to get seasoned by the broth. They're going to suck a lot of the salt out of the broth, but they're always still going to have that nice sort of fatty flavor. All right, perfect. Garlic's just about right. So we're going in, I think it's onions and celery and fennel. Onions and shallots first, that's right, then celery and fennel. Let's go! Oops. So this is going to be really full, guys. The plan is to go like all the way to the top here. So we're going heavy on the veggies, heavy on the flavors. And these are going to cook down as well. As they get soft, they're going to start to take less space in the pot. Oh yeah. All right, back to potatoes. If anybody has any questions at any time, doesn't have to be about chowder. As always, please hit me up. During chops is usually the best time to ask questions because I'm not monologuing about whatever. Anybody got anything? What's that, sir? Oh, I'm using russets right now. And this is what I would use pretty much every time. Unless you want to use something else, you certainly can. I like russets because they're fairly starchy. We're not going to mash the potatoes like my grandma used to do. She'd cook the potatoes, and then she'd just take a potato masher and like mash all throughout the soup before she stirred it and put the quahogs back in. We're not going to mash our soup. We're going to keep these whole, but the starch from the potatoes is still going to help to get a very nice mouthfeel on this and have it sort of thicken. So I like russets because they're some of the starchier potatoes that you can get in the U.S. There are definitely starchier potatoes out there, but if you use too much starch, then you're going to have like a paste soup, which is not, chowder paste could be pretty good. A little like chowder spread. I could see that doing fairly well at Net Result or something. I actually just recently found out about this yellow potato from Peru. That is Peru, by the way, has a really fabulous potato culture. They have these purple sweet potatoes that they eat in a lot of things, but they have a yellow potato, kind of similar in flavor to our like Yukon Golds, but it's incredibly starchy, like very much in line with yuca or what's that other one called? But yuca's the one I can really think about. It's very, very starchy, and what they do is they peel it and they boil it, and then they'll put it through a ricer and they'll like mix it until it gets really, really starchy, and then they'll layer it in a pan. Oh, they mix ají amarillo, which is a yellow pepper that also grows in Peru. They mix that into the potatoes, the mashed potatoes, and then they'll layer it in a pan with either like a tuna salad or a chicken salad and avocado. It's like a national dish down there. Just found out about it the other day from one of my friends. It looks absolutely delicious, but the problem is finding the potatoes. You can like use russets, but if you've ever cooked a russet potato, like a boiled potato, you make mashed potatoes, it's still pretty like, not goopy, but it's mashed potatoes. It's still not really like a paste. You don't probably want pasty mashed potatoes, but one of the things that they said in the recipe is if you can't find them, you bake your russets. And when you bake a potato, you're taking a lot of the moisture out, as opposed to boiling the potato where you add quite a lot of moisture in. And in taking that moisture out, all you have left over is the starch. And so that russet acts kind of like these starchy yellow potatoes and will let you make almost like a paste. Fufu, I think is what it's called, is another dish that's sort of like a pounded plantain or I think yuca as well. It's very similar sort of texture. Very, very starchy, very, very delicious. I mean, if you like starchy things. For me, I kind of love that almost like sticky rice texture quality of it. I love gummies too. I don't know if anybody ever, gummy candy is probably one of my favorite, not dirty secrets, but it's a great late night treat. So you can see there's some really nice spawn down there, and that's not burnt, that's just a beautiful brown. That's what we want. As I start putting more vegetables in there, that is going to start to dissolve. It's just sugars from the bacon and from the onions here that is starting to caramelize on the bottom. As the moisture gets released from the vegetables, that will start to just get dissolve. There we go. I'm going to put just about half of the fennel in now, a little less on the celery. I just want to make sure there's enough room for our potatoes. That's going to be probably the last two bulky things, is these veggies and the potatoes. And then we'll be putting in the chowders, the actual quahogs themselves, and the broth. But the broth will fill all the space between the veggies, so it won't really add much to our total volume. And the quahogs are probably only going to be about like a half an inch of actual chunk in there. So I just want to make sure we have this full, but I don't want to have it overfull. Yeah. So it's just, for me, it's a time saving thing, and I'll get back to them. I was actually just about to talk about that. Yeah. So there's always like a weird small piece when I cut my potatoes like this that just like doesn't fit into the stack. I always want a flat bottom when I'm cutting. It makes things safer. So there's always like the odd piece that that just doesn't sort of work with that strategy. And so what I do is I just throw them all to the side. And then I do two things. I'll either come back through, if I end up using all these potatoes, for instance, I'll come back through and I'll just cut them. I'll do them individually, and I'll just like make those sticks, make these sticks, and then come back through and treat these almost like their own potato, basically. But so yeah, I really just put it aside for safety. I like to have a flat bottom when I'm cutting potatoes. They can be kind of slippery, and so then they'll sort of collect. But if I don't do that, if I'm cooking at home, I'll use these for breakfast. I'll throw them in a pan just like that, fry them till this is almost like burnt, and they're usually completely cooked at that point because they have a nice sealed edge here. So when this starts to evaporate, the moisture goes straight through the potato to try and escape. The skin traps it, and they usually cook pretty quick. So I usually turn them into breakfast potatoes. But yeah, good noticing. I do that. That's just like an efficiency thing for me. Working in professional kitchens for so long, it just becomes sort of like something that I like have to do. Every motion you make in the kitchen takes time. Every process you do, is going to take time, and so the best way to save time is to do the same motion over and over again. Your brain gets to do a groove. You can just sort of do everything all at once. So when I'm cutting my potatoes, I go to, this one just has a weird top, so that's actually kind of perfect. I go directly to my safe method, and there's that extra piece, and I could stop in between each potato and do that piece. But for me, I save, even just like a minute can be massive when you're in a commercial kitchen. So anytime I can save, I like to save, and especially the way I cook nowadays, where I'm usually doing my chops like in between trying to cook as well. Saving time can be really, 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 really helpful. And there's just always, it's just something about potatoes. There's always like a really weird piece that just doesn't want to fit the norm. So I always put it to the side. And for me, honestly, breakfast potatoes is usually my go-to. Or you can also just arrange them on a sheet pan and just bake them. They're quite good like that as well. Okay, awesome. Let's get this thing rocking. Oh yeah, we got noise in the bottom. Good. So again, this is just like delicious on its own. I mean, you don't have to add the broth back in there if you don't want to. Just looking at that's potatoes. I think I'm gonna do the rest. So now we get to the fun part, or some of the fun part. It's all fun, really. This is just about there. I don't want to add the potatoes too quickly. The fennel is starting to get soft, though, so I think I'm just going to go in there. I just don't want to like overburden this pot. I want it to be able to come to a boil pretty quick when we do get to that point. So I'm going to throw the potatoes in there now, start them heating up, and also see how much space I've got in here. Oh yeah, baby. Perfect. Alright, so I'm just going to leave these to the side. Have those for breakfast someday. Alright, we don't need the cutting board anymore. We're moving into quahog land. Let's see, what do I got? So we're just going to get rest of that out of there, and we're going to start picking our quahogs. How this heats up. So I'm just going to stir these potatoes in. I want to make sure they get all the way incorporated, nice and stirred in there. Right now they're picking up all that lovely bacon fat, all that lovely liquid that's come out from the peppers, or from the celery and fennel and onions, and they're getting flavored basically. This is sort of us seasoning the potatoes, as it were. It's also helping them to come to temperature. The broth is still pretty warm, which is nice. A lot of times when I'd be doing this, the broth would be ice cold. so it would really lower the temperature, but the broth is actually going to help us come back up to temperature. So if I get these potatoes nice and warm, we should be able to get a simmer on the soup pretty fast, which is good. We want the soup to be simmering for about 10 minutes. Hopefully that'll get these potatoes cooked completely, but we got to get it to a simmer first, which can always be awkward when you're adding lots of stuff together. And you can just see as I'm stirring this, you can see the different sizes of the vegetables, like I was talking about earlier. You got the smaller celery and fennel. You got your onions and your potatoes a little bit bigger, and then the bacon is the sort of the smallest piece, and is really something that we want you to be able to taste, but it doesn't become sort of the star of the show. Bacon chowder is also delicious. Bacon corn chowder, I'd put it like maybe 3 times as much bacon if I was doing something like that. But again, bacon for us right here is a flavoring ingredient. We want it to really bring everything together and really sort of just jumpstart our taste buds. But we don't want it to be necessarily the star of the dish. Ooh, that's gonna be good. Sweet. We'll just let that sit, and hopefully all those little crunchy bits will go into the bottom. So I'm just gonna set up a little session here. I've got a trash right below me to put the shells in. That one was empty. Whoops. He's somewhere in there. And I'm just gonna pull out, start pulling out my quahogs from the shell. And you can see there, you'll have the 2 mussels here. One of them will usually stay on the shell when you pull it out. The other will stay in there. We're gonna keep them. I'm gonna cut these in half. So that mussel shouldn't be too much of a problem. One of the important reasons why we wanna cook these well and not overcook them is that mussel gets more and more tough the longer you cook it. So if you cook these perfectly, you can eat both the mussels if you want to. You can even eat them whole like this, though I do like to cut them in half. I think it just it's a little bit better mouth experience, and they fit on the spoon better. So these come out pretty easy. You just basically pull, and you'll see like part of it will stay behind. And just do your best to. One of the things in the kitchen that I'd often do is I'd throw this in the trash and put the shell in the. I just did it. Don't do that. It's really, especially all that work you put into these quahogs, you don't want to throw them away. But your brain just gets like sort of, especially when you're doing repetitive tasks like this, it's very easy to sort of cross the wires, as it were. So yeah, most of these are open completely, which is great. It's exactly what I was hoping for. We got all those little quahogs from earlier. We don't want to take any of the veggies here. These veggies have been cooked hard and don't really have much left in them. We purposely really cooked them, so we got all that flavor out of them. Ooh, nice and juicy. And some of these have opened since I've taken them out. There weren't this many open ones when I pulled them in here, but the residual heat, as well as just their own, some of them were closed even though they were dead, so they've just kind of, dang it, did I just do another one? Oh well, sorry. See, I haven't done this in a while, so my brain is like, that's why it's very helpful when you're setting up your workstation. Left hand, trash, right hand, meat. Keep it consistent, and then you won't have as many mess ups. And this goes back to that same concept of like saving time in a kitchen. The place I'm putting the meats is very close to the hand I'm removing the meats with. I have a very easy process for my trash. I don't have to like take my trash and like move it somewhere else, and I can just drop it right where I am. So that's huge for time saving. We like saving time around here. All right, nice. So those are pretty nice. I can hear that there's a lot of heat at the lower levels here. It's just not making it to the top. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my broth in there and get this started on its journey to being the best chowder. So we're just gonna pour it all in there and try and just leave that little bit at the bottom so we don't get any grit. Once you start seeing the garlic, that's when you know you gotta stop. And that's it, that's all those crunchy bits we don't want. But the rest is beautiful, beautiful broth and this beautiful, beautiful chowder. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty excited by the amount of sort of liquid to chunks we have there. I'm gonna add just a touch of water just to make sure I cover my veggies. And then we're gonna get this guy broiling. Before I do that though, I'm going to take a quick taste test. Just make sure that it's salty enough. It should be incredibly salty, but yeah, it could actually use a little bit of water. Let's go. So yeah, the brine was very, very salty, which is good. I'm a big fan of an extra salt. And then we don't want it to get too much less salty than that. It's not like we added salt, it just happens to be as salty as they were. But I do want to make sure I have enough liquid in here to cook this. But I don't want all the way full, because I still need to put my cohogs in there. I'm just going to put the lid on there, get that guy to a boil. Oh, we're doing great on time. It's almost 3:30. So this is why I went till 4, because it's not done yet. But I know we're going to be close. I think we're going to get there just in time. Thank you all for your patience. I'm hopeful that I've been entertaining in the time.
Chris, instead of water, could you add a little more wine?
Yeah, 100%. At this point, you're risking it tasting a little boozy because it's only going to have so much time to cook off, about 10 minutes before the potatoes are there. It should cook off at that point. But adding wine at this point will make it taste more like wine. One of the things is we put the wine in really early in our process before we cooked a lot of the alcohol off. We also cooked a lot of the flavor off. We want the aspects of the wine, the acidity, the sugars, but we don't necessarily want the flavor of the wine. Adding wine at this point will make it taste like wine, which is not a bad thing necessarily if you have a really good wine, but I don't know how good that wine is, you know? So if you had a good wine though, yeah, finishing with wine is definitely a thing that a lot of people will do. For that wine, I don't trust it, but yeah, it definitely wouldn't hurt. And there's plenty of time to cook the actual alcohol, but you will just have more wine flavor if you do that. It's sort of the difference between putting fresh tomatoes on top of pasta and using a tomato sauce, right? The tomato sauce is it's a completely different beast, but they are still the same thing. Oh yeah. Sweet. Oh my god, this is gonna be so good, guys. Perfect. We're getting there. And there'll be a bit more broth in the bottom here as well, from opening some of these ones that hadn't opened all the way, and just from me moving them around and stuff. So. So yeah, if you did it perfectly, all of them would be like that, where they're just barely open. That's like that. That's impossible to do realistically in a pot. If you wanted to spend the time, you could do really small batches of them. But I don't know. For me, cooking a big pot of chowder is cooking a big pot of chowder. I don't want to spend that much time doing it if I can help it. I want to spend way more time eating it. Whoa. So for those of you who want to get your own cohogs, if you guys didn't know, it is completely free for seniors to get a shellfish permit here in the town of Edgartown. I think all the towns in Massachusetts, but definitely here in Edgartown. So those of you who are seniors, even if you don't want to go yourselves, you can get the permit, and if it's a family permit, you can have one of your family members go for you. In the summer, we're hopefully going to be doing quahog and oyster programs again, showing people how to shuck and eat those. But when we're doing the quahog programs, we'll likely be working with the shellfish department again to do some sort of some harvesting lessons. So they'll take people out to Katama launch and show you guys where to get some quahogs. So keep your eyes out for that if you're here in the summer. We started doing it last summer. It was a lot of fun. Shellfish department had a lot of fun with it too, so I'm pretty sure they're going to want to do it again this year. It's a couple months off still, but keep your ears out. Quahogs and oysters will be back this summer for Saltwater Wednesdays, and you'll get a chance to get your own fresh quahogs, and you'll know exactly what to do with them after too.
How does 10 pounds compare to like a bushel is legal?
Oh sure, yeah. 10 pounds I'd say is about a quarter bushel maybe. So I think that's called a peck. But I'm not 100% on that. What I put in here is about 10 pounds. This is a 8-quart pot. 8-quart pot? I think it's an 8-quart pot. And a pint is a pound the world around, at least for liquids. And so in an 8-quart pot, I'm going to fit about, with shell mass, I'm probably not going to fit 8 quarts. So I figured I would probably fit about 5 quarts of quahogs, and then that ends up being about, sorry, not quarts. 5 quarts, which would be 10 pints, and then a pint's a pound. So I thought 10 pounds worth of quahogs was kind of the vibe. That's like a very, very rough estimate of measurement, but in general, any sort of water-based thing or things that have water in them, about a pint of them, which is 2 cups, is going to weigh about a pound. It's kind of anything for universal density or water density, which I guess is like 1 on the scale. All right, we got a couple others. I'm going to grab an actual quahog knife here. Well, it's technically a scallop knife, but that's my favorite knife for opening quahogs. I should have planned ahead for this one. So this one's a scallop knife. For those of you who've done opening lessons with me, this is my favorite thing for opening quahogs. Quahog knives are just a little bit longer, and they're great for opening like chowders, but they're not so great for opening actual little necks. So these are going to be really easy because they're already cooked. But it's the same process, so I'm going to give you a quick little opening lesson. So you go in the front like this, and you just kind of squeeze your hand like that, and then you want to just cut the muscles that are keeping it closed, which is basically what I'm doing here. It's a lot easier to do when they're cooked. Great practice though, I guess, now that I think about it. But if you want to see that and more, you can definitely join up for the quahog program in the summer. Give this guy a stir. Yeah, there we go. We're starting to get some bubbles on the top. That's what I like to see. Oh my god, this is going to be great. I don't want to oversell it too much, but it smells really good. Sometimes I'm like worried because we don't have a vent fan in here, but also at the same time it's kind of nice because I feel like it's just probably like saturated with the smell of chowder right now. I can only imagine what my coworkers are doing out there. Yeah, I hope we have enough for them. You guys come first, so. So yeah, again, if I was like trying to do the absolute best I possibly could at this is exactly where I'd want all of my quahogs to be. I wouldn't want any of them easy and open like that. But I like things to be easy sometimes, so I don't often bother spending that extra time to really get them all perfectly cooked. When they're less cooked like this, they're a lot more chunky. You can sort of see the difference between like those two. That one's pretty good too. I don't really have any here that are like dried up. But the dried up ones, they're a little bit more leathery. That's how you can tell you overcooked them. But we did a really good job here. I don't think any of these are overcooked. Even the ones that were like completely splayed open were still pretty perfect. One of the nice things about working in a commercial kitchen is we have prep cooks. To be fair though, I love this chowder recipe so much I always did this whole thing myself anyways, but is that a pearl? That's pretty cool. I think that's a pearl. So you don't usually find, that was that one that I was talking about earlier that looked like he had been through some stuff. You don't usually find pearls, at least not like a classic pearl, like shiny and stuff in quahogs. But you will find something like that, which was probably whatever it is that messed him up. That was his response to it. Animals like this that have shells, they can just sort of make shell out of nowhere. That's how they grow. And so when they get something in them that is hurting them or making them feel ill, they'll usually just cover it with some of their own shell, and that's when you get something like that, which is essentially a pearl, just not a very pretty one. But he probably got a bit of grain in there, or maybe another quahog sort of took his growing space. Unclear exactly what happened to him, but that was the result of it. He got a nice little pearl there. So it's not going to be worth anything, and it's not very pretty, but it's the same process. It's just that some animals have a lot more pretty shells. Most pearls, in fact, I don't even think come from oysters. They come from abalone, I think is what it is. You get that mother pearl shell, that really beautiful sort of prismatic color. But oysters don't really do that. Oysters kind of have a pretty ugly shell color. So I think you can find pearls in pretty much any shellfish that grows its own shell. Scallops won't get them often because they're pretty open. They move around a lot, so usually if they get something abrasive in them, they'll just sort of spit it out. But a lot of the slower moving bivalves and oysters especially, which really don't move at all, once they get something in them, it's kind of hard to get it out. They don't really want to sit there open because you'll get fish will come and take them out. So they usually keep themselves pretty well closed, and their only response is to just sort of cover. Perfect. Alright, we'll just put that last bit of broth in here. Again, just don't put the last bit in because that's where all the chunks are. Alright. Let's just get this back here. I'm just going to chop these guys up so that we have a little bit more share. That's kind of cool. I might take that home. This is looking very, very nice. So we'll chop these guys up, and then I'm going to start opening up some oysters for those who are interested. And the soup should be done, I'd say, in about 10 minutes or so, but yeah, we're doing pretty good. I want to make sure those potatoes are cooked. When we did the oyster stew, the potatoes weren't quite there yet. I don't want that to happen again. So we're going to spend the time we need to. So I'm just cutting these if they do still have their muscle attached, which a lot of these ones on the top don't. I'm cutting them right along the muscle, cutting that muscle in half. That's going to help with the texture. That muscle is one of the sort of toughest parts on quahog. It's kind of funny because the muscle is like the only thing we eat on scallops. It's just interesting how different, similar sort of animals can be as far as their biology and what is what. But the muscle on the quahog is very, very tough from holding it closed all the time, whereas the scallop one is very, very tender, even though that's what they use to move around. It's kind of a very interesting difference between the two. So again, I'm just trying to cut that muscle in half when I can. It's not going to be super tough anyways, but any toughness that might be there will be cut by cutting it in half. And again, I'm pulling more than one quahog out if possible. Again, the less motions, the better. If I had like a bigger cutting board, I might just have like all of these dumped out on the cutting board. It's just less movement that you have to do in the kitchen. It means you can cook for longer, and you can do a lot more in that time because you're saving time. Huh. That must have been that pearl guy. I just got a little crunchy bit. And you can put these in a food processor if you have one. Some people don't like chunks of quahog in their chowder. They just want that flavor. Perfectly fine. Putting these in the food processor would definitely be nice and fast, which would be good too. But if you're doing that, you probably wouldn't lose too much from just buying canned clams at that point. They're going to come already in that process. But don't let me yuck your yum. If that's what you like, do it. They're still going to be a lot better than canned. They just will have lost a lot of that texture. And if you're also doing that, cook your quahogs a lot harder. You don't have to worry as much about the texture if you're planning on blending them up anyways. But I like pretty big chunks. If I was using just little necks, I'd probably just keep these whole. But because we have a sort of a mix of cherry stones, and because there's quite a lot of you guys, I want to make sure everybody gets a bunch of chunks of quahog in their chowder. Oh yeah. That's right. Oh well. I got this bowl out to put them in there and then did not use it at all. But sometimes that's nice to have a big cutting board. Alright, let's do a quick cleanup and then I'm going to start cracking some raw oysters while we wait for these potatoes to cook. I'll give you guys a quick little lesson on how to do that. I do have some quahogs as well, so if anybody is more interested in little necks as opposed to quahogs, that's awesome. I don't have anything to put with them. There's no cocktail sauce or anything like that, so you'll have to eat them straight up. There's some pickled peppers here, so you're welcome to use those as well. But yeah, that's all we've got. So it's a little bonus. You can thank the shellfish department. They gave me a lot of quahogs and tons and tons of oysters. Well, not tons, but 17 I think I counted. So I'm going to grab a couple of those out. If anybody would like some, just feel free to come on up and just wait in line. I'll hand them out one at a time. You can grab a bowl to put them in. And there's a trash right there to throw them away in. Just feel free to queue up and I'll start going. I can open about 2 oysters a minute, so. Alright, I'm going to crack the oysters first, and then I'm going to jump into cherry stones. So. You want a cherry stone? Okay, cool.
You can give her behind it, whatever you want to give her.
So I like to use a tray for doing my oysters. This glove does not fit.
Well, then you must have quit.
And so the hinge is right there on the oyster. That's what we're going to go after. You want to get your knife into that hinge so you get a pretty good seat. This oyster, I can already tell, is not going to give me a good seat, so I'm not going to bother showing you. I'm just going to kind of brute force it.
Make me feel better. You're struggling too.
Oh yeah, this oyster was a bad boy. Awesome, but you just want to sort of work at that hinge until you can get a lever, and then once you get a lever, you can break the hinge, work your way into the muscle on the oyster. That's where the adductor muscle is, that thing that we were cutting up on the quahogs, and then you can just sort of cut that muscle. Once you cut the muscle, you should be able to take the top shell off, cut the bottom muscle. I always like to flip them. You said you were a quahog, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great, perfect. And since I'm here, might as well do it.
Two enough for two.
Yeah.
Quahogs.
Yeah. So for quahogs, again, you want to find the front lip there, and you want to put your knife right in line with that front lip. Oh, okay. This is actually not a good one to do it on. Here, let's do this one. This one's pretty better. So right in the front lip there, it's kind of hard to see. It's very hard to see, in fact, on little necks. You want to get your knife right in between the 2 shells, and then you just sort of close your... Whew. Little necks are tough. You sort of close. Come on, baby. He's closed tight. I just, there we go. So you kind of, hopefully you kind of saw that. You kind of close your hand on it and it slips right in. And then you can sort of just go and cut both of those adductor muscles that are keeping it closed. You can eat them anywhere.
No, I know.
Occasionally find them when I'm just like snorkeling, and it's always nice to have a little snack. Cherry stones. All right, great. I'm gonna start cracking these up.
The wine, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, and a glass of wine to go with it. So again, that one I just went right after the hinge.
Oyster.
Oyster, you got it. There you go, my friend.
Thank you.
For those of you who are getting shellfish, feel free to save your bowls, come up for more. The plan is to eat these all before this chowder is done. Oyster for you? Of course, and feel free to come back for some more. I'm just going to give it a little stir, check on it. Looks like it's doing pretty good. Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to be able to provide.
That's not boiling, right, Chris?
What's that?
It's not boiling.
No, it's simmering. Yeah, I just took the lid off because I want to make sure it's actually simmering and doesn't come to a boil. But this thing just takes a long while to heat up. It's a pretty powerful induction burner, but it's not as powerful as like the oven method. So it just takes a little bit longer. Oyster for you. Would you like a cohog as well?
I want an oyster for my wife.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Yeah, of course.
Your trash bag of shells, is it just shells?
No, it's not.
There's
No, it's
garbage in it
everything.
too?
Yeah. You can toss them in that trash bag.
No, I was going to ask you for the shells, but it's too late.
Oh.
Okay.
These were just harvested yesterday. Kind of the best thing ever, honestly. Oyster for you?
Something to just, shoot me
Those oysters here.
Oh yeah. Feel free to come up, guys. Feel free to just get all up in my space. I'll ask you guys to back away when we're about ready for the chowder to serve. But for now, do not be bashful. That one's just.
Get them right. Here's some of the foot. Bottom side is up.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Oyster for you?
Thank you.
The chowder's looking like it's getting pretty close too. I'd say maybe 5 more minutes at this point. What time are we at? Oh, that one doesn't look so bad.
42.
Okay, cool. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it.
We had a bunch they were giving out to seniors earlier.
Yeah. These ones came just from the same place where they're getting the cohogs. So it's not. These are not like really their like normal stock of oysters. These ones are pretty much basically wild, which is kind of fun.
This guy's doing quite a job there.
Yes, these ones are being tough.
It pays to have arms like tree trunks.
Yeah, it's not too bad to be a big dude. I'll say for sure. She fell out. That's all right. Skipper, you here for an oyster?
Yeah.
There you go, of course. I would say so, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty much in them. Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
That's right, let the rest of the world.
Take 2 cherrystones.
Yeah, of course, man. Go on one more oyster? Oh, Susan?
I guess everyone's gonna eat them, sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll probably give a couple to the staff, too.
Yeah, so save them.
I think we're about to be at cohog time, so. Or chowder time, so. course, anytime. This is another oyster for
You
you?
don't seem to have much of an audience for the. Can I have
Oh, yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You take that one. There you go. You don't seem to have much of an audience for the raw, so I'll come back in a couple of months.
That's okay. I'm about to.
What are you going to do with them?
I think the chowder's about done, so I'm gonna give them to Claudia. She mentioned she wanted to make chowder, so
Oh, good. Oh, well, can you spare these?
yeah. It's just her and Gio, so
What's this one?
it's her, just her and Gio, so they don't need tons.
The chowder. I'm going to bring it home. Can
Sure.
it sit outside? Can it sit out of the fridge?
Yeah, it'll be fine for 4 hours.
4 hours, because I'm coming back for the movie and I won't go home at 8 till 8 to eat.
Oh, got you. Sure.
So 4 to 8 will be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to put hot chowder in the fridge. Thank you.
Of course. What can I interest you in, my friend?
Oysters. And if you have some to get rid of them, I'll bring them home.
Just a couple more for the staff, I think. I think the chowder's done too, so I'm gonna start serving that away.
Good. Thank you.
Skip, what would you like? An oyster? Okay, great. This is gonna be my last one for right now, and then I'm gonna get these chowders.
Go ahead. We'll be back.
There you go, Skip. Of course.
I go with
All right, guys, I think this is about done. I'm just gonna double check one of these potatoes.
I stay in OB.
Well, I thought.
You know, when we go over. I know where you're going. Yeah, but I got stuck. Oh, they did. I know.
All right, so I'm gonna start pulling out some of the thyme. Just so you guys all don't have to worry about that. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna emulsify this broth. So we're gonna take all of that lovely fat that's up at the top. We're gonna emulsify it with all the lovely broth that's down at the bottom. And we're gonna do that with just a little bit of a cornstarch slurry. So this is just gonna take a little bit of time as I get a couple of these thymes out. I'm not gonna take them all out. Just whichever ones sort of present themselves at the top of the pot. You can see there's still a lot of leaves floating in there. There's a bay leaf. We'll take that out as well. That's good enough. So we're just going to make a bit of a slurry here. Slurry is literally just water and a thickening agent. In this case, we're using cornstarch because it's really, really powerful. You could use flour as well, but so far this dish has been gluten-free, which is huge. Love a gluten-free dish. So we're just going to start with maybe a tablespoon, maybe just a little more. Doesn't need much. We really don't want it to thicken. I just want it to emulsify. So the less, the better. I actually have a whisk for this. I just think it works a little bit better. What I'm basically looking for is just for that oil slick on the top, which isn't very big because of that bacon, to get emulsified and disappear. I want the broth to be sort of one uniform color all the way throughout. Still a little bit in there, so we're going for a little more.
Chris, what's it that
So I'm emulsifying the oil slick on top into the broth. What that means is that every bite you have is going to have that bacon and that thyme flavor in it. You won't have to sort of, if you like took all the broth off the top, you get all the oil slick out and all that flavor would go with it. But by doing this, we're making sure that flavor stays throughout the entire broth and through the entire chowder. Just a nice sort of method to ensure that flavor is trapped where we want it, which is in the broth. And that looks about right to me. Kind of lightens the broth a little bit as well. Let's just see. There's still a little bit of an oil slick. I think it might just be because I dropped the temp over here. That's why. Whoops, I forgot I turned it down. You do need a boil to happen for the starch to activate and start to cook and start to trap the water and the fat, bind them together. If it doesn't boil, it won't do that. So that's the problem I was having there. Yeah, there's still a little bit, so I'm gonna keep going. It's always tough because I'm like, I don't measure this when I do it at in the restaurant. It's just kind of like a by look thing. And I'm usually using what they call a rondeau, which is a very, very large, wide pot. So it's a lot easier to really sort of pay attention to the top. But the problem here is, I thicken the top, and then the liquid from the bottom comes up and starts to get its work done. I think that's going to do it. Yeah, that looks great. This is also very nice for when we actually do end up putting the cream in there. An oil slick with a cream soup can look really strange. You get like this sort of yellow slick, literally like an oil slick on the top, and it's not always the most appetizing thing to look at. In this situation, it's going to be really tasty, so we won't be too sad about it, but this is like just a nice way to make sure it just mixes very well together. All right, awesome. So that is what we're looking for. Everything looks pretty good. Give it one last little taste. Make sure those potatoes aren't Yeah, wow. Oh my gosh. So it just tastes better after the cornstarch. For all those reasons I was just talking about. It's kind of crazy how much better it tastes. Now we're going to go in with our meats and just literally fill this pot all the way to the top. I made exactly as much as I wanted. Oh yeah, they're completely cooked. I'm literally just heating them through exactly. Yep. I'll bring this back to a boil and we'll be good to go. I'm going to put the cream out for you guys to serve yourselves. You do not have to use it. You can use it. If you do use it, I would use no more than about a tablespoon, but you can put as much as you want in. Just there's just this quart for everybody, so make sure there's enough for everyone. But serve it yourself if we can ever get it open. Come on. I'm like a little greasy, so. I actually wrote a paper on this when I was a kid about packaging that just like isn't easy to open. Like, why is this lit top here? Why is this here? There we go. All right, so this is light cream, not heavy cream, so it's a little bit lighter, but feel free to serve yourselves. I'm gonna start filling bowls, and we're gonna be good to go here. I'm gonna get a ladle. I have a ladle now, which is kind of amazing.
I have so got to go.
Look at me wield!
Here, you can even reuse my pen.
I had a couple people who said that they have to go, so feel free to make it a little bit more. If you've got somewhere to be, please do not hesitate to come on up.
Thanks.
I know Kelsey, you mentioned as well. Please do just.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I just gotta get. There's a couple people here who have like things. I went real close to the end, so of course you're good. Filling you up. So this is maybe just a little bit chunkier than it would have been in the restaurant, but this is about how we did it there. I love a good chunky soup. It just makes things so much better. If any of you have bowls from earlier, feel free to bring them up. I will use them.
Oh, okay, good.
Cool. We're not a restaurant, so I can do that. It's not gonna hurt anybody. You're so very welcome. Thank you for coming.
Very nice, thank you.
Yeah.
It smells delicious.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. Great, thank you.
So, without the cream in it, I call this Rhode Island style. Is that?
I don't really know if that's, like, I don't have a style per se. It's grandma style. Grandma didn't really use cream either. She was all about saving money, so that's part of where I got the process from. Yeah, but I mean, cream is still delicious, so it's not a
Slightly smaller one.
Oh yeah, of course. You're not betraying me if you use the cream.
Same bowl.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Of course, you're very welcome. Yeah, great. I got some set up. Just keep going.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, of course.
Looks so good.
And if you think you've had better chowder, that's totally fine.
Chris, you got two.
Just don't tell me. Sorry, what's that?
You got 2 utensils for opening the shellfish there. Are they
Yeah.
both for quads? Or?
Oyster knife, quahog. So this is technically a scallop knife, but I like it for oyster.
I
For
thought it
quahog.
was, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's the oyster knife, which this is my favorite. This is the
Tough.
Nantucket is straight. This is the Boston style, I believe, is what they call
A
it.
little loop to it there. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Of course.
Where's Mom?
Dude, I reminded her yesterday too. I have no idea.
Oh, jeez.
I'm not upset with her, but I'm like, dude. I even called you yesterday and said like, come to Chowder. So I don't know where she is. I'm so confused.
Look, if you put your quahogs and things in the freezer just for a couple minutes,
Sure.
they open easy.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, for raw, that's a great way to get them done. Or even if you're doing like for chowder quahogs and you're not cooking the broth, they work really well as well. Yeah, you just got to open them over a container so you can catch all that beautiful broth. But yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
You're so.
Zabar's. I bought my first set of knives at Zabar's in New
Oh
York.
really? I don't even know where that came from. That's so funny. Yeah, banana peppers. I do like to put a little bit of extra acid in, like at serving time, which is why the banana peppers are up here. Oh yeah, I can reuse that. Is that yours? Oh, okay, cool. All right, Jen, I'll take your bowl. I'll take your bowl.
Oh, yes,
No, you're good.
thank you.
How many more I got? 2 more? Perfect. Good. We got enough. Well, I knew we'd have enough, but we have enough for the staff. 3 more. Oh, you made it!
Oh, I'm so excited.
Good. I hope you enjoy. Should I call you out right now or not?
If you want,
You don't have to say anything. I just want everybody to cheer for you.
go for it.
It is Julie, right?
Yeah.
I knew that, but guys, I just want you all to praise and thank Julie. She works with the shellfish department. She's one of the main reasons why we have all these lovely quahogs and shellfish over the while. And I'm so happy she came to be able to eat some as well.
Yeah, this is delicious.
You got the last one, man. I hope you're the last person because that was the last bit.
Oh, thank you.
Of course.
Wow.
Everybody got some. Good. Look at that. We did it, guys. I got just enough for the chef. I went pretty chunky, I'm not going to lie, but I was feeling pretty good about how much chowder we had. Thank you.
Why would you do that? You don't need that.
Yeah, but I like it.
Really?
See, as much as I talk about not putting cream in there,
Excellent like this.
right now, like for me, the thing is I've eaten this chowder so many times that like I haven't had it in a while, so for like my first time in a while I want to like go full bore, you know? But yeah, I've eaten this in the like, original state so many times. Like while it's cooling, I have to I'll keep like taking bowls out to see how hot it is. And you don't want to waste it, you know, but you can't put it back in when you're in a kitchen setting. You have to, once it sort of leaves the pot, it's you know, if become sort of a biohazard basically. So that's still pretty good though. So guys, I want to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you.
The next 3 months are going to be a lot of fun for me. We're going to cook some of my favorite things entirely. It's close enough, excuse me, it's close enough to the end of the month that I feel safe just telling you what we're doing next month. So next month we're going to do a raspberry mousse with chocolate cake waffle. So like I said, we're doing like a series of my favorite things. Some of my favorite things are raspberries and waffles. I like them together for breakfast, but I like them separately. Raspberry sorbet, black raspberry ice cream is probably one of my absolute favorite things in the entire world. And I just learned how to make mousse like a month and a half ago, so I love it. It's so much fun. So we're gonna make a raspberry mousse. While the mousse is setting in the fridge, I'm gonna mix up just like a cake batter, and we're gonna put it in a waffle press, so it'll have waffle press cake. It's gonna be really, really tasty and fun. They all get a little bit of waffle square, so make sure to sign up. That's gonna be the first of the month. I think it's 10 a.m. sign up start. 24 people, so hopefully you guys can get there. But then over the next 2 months, we're gonna revisit some of my favorite recipes I've already done before, and then just one of my favorite recipes that I did in my sort of professional career. And in that process, we're gonna sort of explore some of my favorite ingredients, how they come together, and then how you can really just like do crazy things like make waffles out of chocolate cake. And you don't always have to eat your favorite things the same way every single time. So make sure to sign up for that. I look forward to seeing you there.
Did you do scallion pancakes again?
I do love scallion pancakes, but that was a really fun program to do because everybody got to make their own scallion pancakes. But doing them the way we're doing it now with more people, I don't think I'll be able to do scallion pancakes again. Gosh, I do love scallion pancakes. They are one of my favorite things. So maybe we'll have to see if I can make that work somehow. Maybe I'll do them beforehand or something. But thank you so much for that suggestion.
I said you taught me to put my chocolate cake in waffle.
Yeah, exactly. It's the way to go. So we're going to be kind of going back to some of the greatest hits of these past 3 years of cooking at the library. So I'm really excited to go back through it with you guys. I hope to see all of you next month, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.